Hi everyone, welcome to the Story Times. Thanks for joining us. Today we've got a brand new story to share with you. So let's begin. You have 3 months. She stood in the doorway, arms folded tightly across her chest, like she was holding herself together just enough to say the words. Her tone was flat, emotionless, like a corporate memo rather than a conversation between spouses. I looked up from my laptop, eyes burning from the hours I'd spent staring at spreadsheets that refused to cooperate. My startup was bleeding money. Clients were hesitant. Investors weren't calling back. But I believed. I truly believed that I was one lucky break away from a breakthrough. Apparently, she didn't share that belief anymore. I'm serious, James, she said, tapping her foot. 3 months. Either you find a way to start making real money, or I'm done. I can't keep living like this. Struggling. Waiting. Hoping. I blinked, stunned. Is this some kind of joke? Her expression hardened. Do I look like I'm joking? I want a life worth living. Real vacations. A house with a view. I'm 29, and I'm wasting my best years watching you chase dreams like a college kid. I opened my mouth to defend myself, but the words caught in my throat. She'd always known what she signed up for. Long hours. Uncertainty. The grind of building something from nothing. Or so I thought. She turned and grabbed her bag. You've got potential, James. But potential doesn't pay rent. I need someone who can provide, not promise. And then she was gone. The door shut behind her with the finality of a prison gate, and the silence that followed was louder than any argument we'd ever had. That night, I didn't sleep. I just sat there, staring at the empty space where her shoes used to be, wondering how the woman who once said she'd support me no matter what had just given me a deadline. 3 months. To change my life, or lose it all. The apartment felt colder without her. It wasn't just the missing voice, the echo of silence, or the absence of her perfume lingering in the hallway. It was something heavier, like the very walls were mourning the loss of the woman they'd come to know so well. The space we once shared now looked abandoned, forgotten, hollow. I walked around the living room, unsure of what to do with myself. Her favorite blanket still lay draped over the couch. Her coffee mug was in the sink, lipstick stains still clinging to the rim. There were even a few strands of her hair caught in the brush on the bathroom counter. It hit me harder than I expected. I kept waiting for the door to open, for her to storm back in, still angry, but willing to talk, willing to try. But hours passed, then days, and she never came. On the second night, I saw her again, not in person, but on Instagram. She was dressed in a sleek, wine-colored dress I'd never seen before, hair curled just the way she used to do it for special events. Her arm was locked around a man in a tailored suit, and they stood close, too close. The caption beneath the photo read, "New chapters begin when you stop rereading the old ones." I zoomed in on his face. Early 30s, maybe. Confident smirk. What's that cost more than my rent? A pharmaceutical manager. I later learned, stable income, mid-tier success. Not wildly rich. Just slightly better off than me. I stared at that photo for hours. Not because I missed her, but because it lit a fire inside me that no amount of heartbreak could extinguish. It wasn't just betrayal. It was dismissal, rejection, a statement that wasn't worth waiting for. She had written me off. So, I deleted every photo of her from my phone, packed her things into boxes, and left them outside the door. I didn't cry. I didn't beg. I didn't call. I downsized the apartment the next day and signed a lease for a studio no bigger than a storage closet. She said I had 3 months. I intended to use every second of it. The new place was barely livable. Peeling paint. Radiator that hissed like a snake in heat. A window facing an alley filled with dumpsters and stray cats. The mattress was on the floor, the lighting was fluorescent and cold, and my kitchen was just a microwave on a shelf above a mini fridge. But it was cheap, and I needed cheap. Every dollar I had left, I threw into my startup. Hosting fees. Software upgrades. UI redesign. Ads when I could afford them. I lived off boiled eggs, dollar store noodles, and gas station coffee. My phone screen had a crack, but it still worked, so I kept using it. People told me I looked terrible. Pale. Gaunt. Hollow. They weren't wrong. I woke up at 5 a.m. every day, worked until 1 a.m., and maybe slept for 3 or 4 hours. There was no time for anything else. No socializing. No dates. No distractions. I was driven by something far deeper than ambition. Revenge. Not the kind that lashes out in anger. The kind that sharpens itself in silence. that builds in layers, brick by brick, until one day it's too big to ignore. Still, the world didn't reward me instantly. There were weeks where I thought I'd collapse. Days where nothing worked. Clients bailed. Investors ghosted. My app sat in obscurity, buried beneath shinier, better-funded competitors. But I kept going. Then it happened. A cold email. A call. A second meeting. An angel investor who saw what others missed. Suddenly, I had seed funding. Then a workspace. A team. And then, traction. Users came in droves. Word of mouth turned into buzz. Buzz turned into press. Articles, interviews, social media chatter. Suddenly, I was no longer the guy begging for a shot. I was the guy everyone wanted in their corner. 6 months after she gave me a deadline, I wasn't just surviving. I was thriving. And as I checked my bank balance one morning 7 digits deep, I realized something incredible. I didn't need to chase her anymore. She would come crawling back. We were celebrating the company's first $1 million deal when it happened. The office was buzzing. My small team, 5 people who had believed in me when no one else would, had brought champagne and paper cups. I remember standing by the window, watching the city lights blur through the glass, when my phone vibrated in my pocket. I glanced at the screen. Her name. For a second, my chest tightened. Not with longing, but with anticipation. Like a boxer hearing the bell before the final round. The message was short. Hey, I know it's been a while. I've been thinking about you. I didn't respond. Not out of indecision, out of strategy. I wanted to see what she would do next. 2 days later, another text. I saw your article on TechCrunch. I'm proud of you. You really did it. Again, I said nothing. Then came the third message. Can we talk? Curiosity tugged at me. Not because I missed her, but because I wanted to hear it. I wanted to hear what rock bottom sounded like when it finally cracked her voice. I replied, talk. About what? She answered almost instantly. Us. A week later, she showed up at my office. I never gave her the address. She must have found it online. My name was starting to pop up more and more. Interviews. Podcasts. Even a short documentary feature about scrappy startup founders who rose from nothing. Security called me. There's a woman downstairs. She's crying. Says she knows you. I knew who it was before you finished the sentence. I took the elevator down. When the doors opened, I saw her. Makeup smudged. Hair frizzy. Clothes that looked expensive but tired, like she hadn't been able to afford new ones in months. She looked up at me with wide, pleading eyes. And then, she did something I never expected. She fell to her knees. I messed up. James, she whispered. I made the biggest mistake of my life. He wasn't you. He never cared the way you did. I thought I wanted money, but I just wanted you. I see that now. She reached for my hand like it was the last branch before drowning. But I didn't move. Instead, I slipped my phone from my pocket and pressed record. I let her talk. She poured out everything, right there in the marble-tiled lobby of my new office building, with executives in suits walking past, pretending not to stare. Her mascara streaked down her cheeks like war paint. Her breath came out in little gasps between words, and her hands trembled as they clutched at mine. James, I'm sorry. I swear, I didn't know what I was doing, she said, her voice cracking. I was scared. I thought he could offer me what you couldn't. But I was wrong. So wrong. He didn't care about me. Not really. You always cared. I remained still, letting my expression stay unreadable. The phone in my coat pocket kept recording. Every pathetic plea, every wavering syllable. I wanted it all saved, not because I needed proof, but because I wanted her words to live somewhere outside of her head. So that one day, even she couldn't deny them. I love you, she whispered, looking up through tear-stained eyes. I never stopped. I was stupid. Please, can we just try again? She looked like a broken statue, crumbled at the feet of a man she once deemed unworthy. But I wasn't the same man anymore. I slowly stepped back, letting her hands fall from mine. Her face collapsed in confusion as I walked toward the glass doors without a single word. I rode the elevator back to the top floor, walked straight into my office, and opened my laptop. I pulled up my email and attached the audio file to a blank message. No subject, no body text, just the file. I typed in one address, the man she left me for. Then I hit send. The man she thought was better, richer, safer. Let him hear it all. The desperation, the regret, the confessions of someone who threw away loyalty for a taste of luxury. It was poetic. Later that night, I received a single text from an unknown number. "She's all yours, man. I'm done." And just like that, her second fairy tale ended, before it ever really began. The fallout was faster than I expected. By the next morning, her Instagram was wiped clean. Gone were the polished photos, the overpriced brunches, the relationship goals, captions. No more rooftop selfies or designer handbags clutched in limousine seats. It was as if she had tried to delete the entire chapter in one panicked breath. But the internet never forgets. A single black and white quote appeared in place of the glossy facade. Some mistakes can't be undone. I sat back in my leather chair and let that sink in. She messaged me again. Paragraphs this time. Long, spiraling sentences filled with contradictions and emotional whiplash. He misunderstood everything. He overreacted. He never really knew me. "You were the one, James. I just couldn't see it back then. I'm sorry. Please talk to me." I didn't reply. She followed up the next day. Shorter message this time. Less flowery. More fragile. "I lost him. I have nothing. Can we just talk?" I muted the thread. Days passed. Then another message, this one colder, stripped of emotion. "Going back to Alaska. Parents said I can stay in the spare room for a while. I don't have anywhere else." I read it twice. She had climbed so high, convinced herself that life was about trading up. That love was a currency, and she deserved a higher bidder. Now, she was packing her bags and heading back to the place she once mocked, the town she swore she'd never return to. Her safety net. Her shame. No penthouse. No penthouse man. No spotlight. Just snow and silence. I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel cruel. I felt finished. She was no longer a wound. She was a scar proof of what I'd overcome, nothing more. Her story was collapsing, and mine was only beginning. While she boarded a flight back to the frozen edges of Alaska, I was signing paperwork for a penthouse in Manhattan. It was everything our old life wasn't. Floor-to-ceiling windows, handcrafted wood floors, a view of the skyline that shimmered like ambition itself. I didn't buy it to impress anyone. I bought it because I'd earned it. Because every square foot screamed, "You made it." I filled it with meaning. No flashy gold or unnecessary clutter. Just quiet power. A rare vintage record player in the corner. A sculpture from a struggling artist I once minored. Shelves lined with books that had fueled my mind when the world had written me off. And still, the silence was what I cherished most. Not the kind she left me with, that hollow, aching vacuum of abandonment. This silence was peace. It hummed with pride, with freedom, with the satisfaction of not just surviving the fall, but owning the climb. My days were a blur of meetings, strategy sessions, invitations to speak at panels, startup expos, global entrepreneur summits. I turned some of them down, not because I was ungrateful, but because I finally had the power to choose where I spent my time. Reporters reached out constantly. "What motivated you? Who doubted you most? What happened to your ex-wife after the success?" I always smiled politely and answered the first two, never the third. She wasn't my headline anymore. She was a footnote, a closed chapter in a book that had moved on to better things. I didn't need to tarnish her name or retell her betrayal. The world had watched it unfold, quietly, subtly, and now they watched me, admired me, for what I'd become. Not despite her leaving, but because of it. She thought she was setting me free to fail. Instead, she set me on fire, and I learned how to burn brighter than ever before. I hadn't said her name in months. Not to friends. Not in interviews. Not even in my own thoughts. But fate has a funny way of pulling ghosts out of the closet just when you think they've faded for good. I was at a rooftop dinner party in Soho, hosted by one of my early investors. The view was stunning, the wine expensive, and the crowd buzzed with ambition. A mix of founders, executives, and influencers. I was deep in conversation with a woman who ran a tech nonprofit when an old college friend came up behind me and tapped my shoulder. "James," he said with a knowing smirk, "you'll never guess who I ran into last month." He didn't have to finish. I already knew. He went on anyway. "She's back in Alaska, living with her parents again. No job. That guy dumped her cold after the voice memo you sent." I raised an eyebrow, silently sipping my whiskey. She told people she needed a spiritual reset. But I think the truth is, she ran out of options. I just nodded, saying nothing. Because what could I say? I wasn't angry anymore. There was no resentment. No heat. Just a cool, detached understanding that some people are lessons, not partners. And she had taught me more than she could ever know. I started giving lectures to young entrepreneurs, taught them how to build from nothing, how to protect their ideas, their hearts, their fire. I invested in other people's dreams, gave second chances to those who still had fight in them. I didn't tell them about her. I didn't need to. But in quiet moments, between red-eye flights and midnight work sessions, I'd catch myself remembering the old me. The man who thought love meant sacrifice, who thought loyalty could change a person. He died the moment she gave me a deadline. And the man who rose in his place? He no longer chased approval. He attracted power. Because the best revenge isn't loud. It's quietly outgrowing the people who thought you never would. It was a quiet Sunday morning in the loft. Rain tapped against the windows like a soft reminder that the world was still turning. I stood barefoot in the kitchen, sipping espresso and flipping through the pages of a book on negotiation tactics. Peaceful, centered, content. Then came the ping of an incoming email. I glanced at the screen. No subject, no preview, just a name in the sender line. Hers. For a moment, I considered deleting it without opening. But something inside me, curiosity, closure, maybe both, nudged me to click. It was long. Over 1,000 words poured from her in fragmented thoughts and raw vulnerability. She spoke of Alaska, how the snow felt colder than she remembered, how her old bedroom now felt like a tomb of failure. She said she couldn't go into town without people staring, whispering, judging. The man she left me had ended things as soon as he heard her voice trembling on that recording. She didn't even get a chance to explain. I thought money meant safety, she wrote, but it only made me greedy. I chased comfort, and in the process, I left behind the only person who ever made me feel like I was enough without it. She talked about her parents, how disappointed they were, how her mom barely spoke at dinner, and her dad couldn't look her in the eye. How, for the first time in her life, she felt truly alone. Then came the part that almost made me pause. I don't expect forgiveness. I know I don't deserve it. I just needed you to know that I see it now. Everything. And I'm sorry I didn't see it when it mattered. I closed the laptop gently. No anger. No satisfaction. No temptation to reply. That message wasn't for me. It was for her. A last-ditch attempt to rewrite the ending. But I had already moved on to a new book entirely. She was seeking closure, but I'd already found mine. In silence. In growth. In letting go. I hadn't planned on seeing her again. Not ever. But fate doesn't always ask for permission. I was returning from a speaking engagement in Seattle, an entrepreneurship summit where I had delivered a keynote on building resilience. My flight had a layover in Anchorage. Just a couple of hours. Just long enough to stretch my legs, grab a coffee, and fly back home to Manhattan. I wasn't expecting Alaska to feel so distant. Not geographically. Emotionally. It wasn't the place I remembered from our college visits. It was smaller now. Quieter. Grayer. I walked through the terminal, dressed in a tailored overcoat and leather boots, wheeling my carry-on past the waiting area when I saw her. Sitting alone. At first, I didn't recognize her. The woman I knew had perfect hair, flawless makeup, and a spark of arrogance that clung to her like perfume. But this woman? She was different. Wearing a faded hoodie, hair tied in a messy bun, no makeup. Her phone screen was cracked, and her suitcase looked beaten, like it had been dragged through years of regret. She clutched a paper cup of gas station coffee, like it was the last thing she owned. She looked smaller somehow, as if the weight of everything she'd lost had physically pulled her down. She didn't see me, but I stopped anyway, just for a second. Not out of pity, not out of curiosity, just to remind myself how far I'd come. I could have said something. I could have offered a nod, a smirk, a final goodbye. But what purpose would that serve? She was already living the consequences of her choices. I kept walking. She must have sensed me because she looked up briefly, eyes wide, searching, desperate. But I was already gone, swallowed into the crowd. 30 minutes later, I was on my flight, first-class seat reclined, glass of bourbon in hand. I glanced out the window at the snow-covered town below. She was still there, somewhere on the ground. And I was flying above it all. Months rolled by like pages in a well-written novel. My company crossed 8 figures in valuation. We expanded across Europe. I opened a new branch in Berlin and another in Toronto. I brought on a COO, a legal team, and an entire department just to handle press requests. My time became more valuable than I could have imagined. Every hour, every meeting, every signature carried weight. But her messages kept coming, like clockwork. First, a simple, Happy New Year, smiley face. Then a few weeks later, I watched her TED Talk. You were incredible. So proud of you. Another month, another ping. I saw you on TV. You looked happy. They were polite, careful, nostalgic, like she was tapping on the window of a house she used to live in, hoping someone inside might still remember her. Sometimes I opened them. Most times I didn't. I never replied. Because by then, I understood something crystal clear. She wasn't reaching out because she loved me. She was reaching out to the man she didn't believe I could become. The version of me who proved her wrong. The one she couldn't imagine standing on stages, commanding boardrooms, signing partnerships with industry titans. But she didn't get to have that man. Because she left when he was just an idea, still messy, still uncertain, still figuring it all out. She chose stability over belief. And belief is what made me unstoppable. One evening, as I stared out the window of my penthouse, watching the lights of the city burn bright against the night sky, her final message appeared on my screen. If I asked for one real conversation, would you give it to me? I stared at it. Then, slowly, I opened my settings, found her number, and pressed block. Not out of cruelty, but because I didn't need the past tapping at my shoulder anymore. I didn't succeed to prove her wrong. I succeeded to prove myself right. I stood on the balcony of my Manhattan penthouse, the same one I once stared out from in the early days of success, still unsure if it was all real. Now it was routine, a place of reflection, a vantage point above a city that once seemed too large for a man like me. Below, the streets buzzed with life, taxis honking, conversations echoing off skyscrapers, lights flickering in every direction like a city that never stops chasing. But I wasn't chasing anymore. I had arrived. Behind me, on a sleek black shelf, sat the framed first dollar my company ever earned. Next to it, a crystal award from a business leadership summit. The wall behind it was filled with books, most with my name in the acknowledgments. Across the room, my phone buzzed with new messages, invites, collaborations, opportunities. And not one of them was from her. I hadn't heard from her in months. After that last message, the one I never answered, she disappeared from my life completely. No more emails. No more check-ins. No more whispers from the past. Someone told me she still lives in Alaska. She works part-time at a local diner and lives with her parents in the same house she swore she'd escape forever. The man she chose over me? Gone. The friends she flaunted on social media? Gone. The image, the lifestyle, the pride? Gone. All she has now is time. Time to wonder. Time to regret. Time to realize that success isn't just about money or fame. It's about growth, ownership, rising from the ashes without bitterness, only purpose. And me? I don't speak her name. Not out of hate, but out of discipline. She's not part of the legacy I'm building. She's a lesson, a fire I walked through, a test I passed. As the sun dipped below the skyline and the city glowed like a constellation of earned dreams, I took one final sip of my drink and whispered the truth I now lived by. The best revenge is your own success. And that's it for today's story, my friends. Always remember, trust, loyalty, respect. Thank you so much for staying till the end. If you enjoy our videos, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Have a good day. Thank you for watching. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do so, and hit the notification bell to stay updated with more shocking real-life stories happening around you.